Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we're back to another live stream of Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and video game news. Let's hop in. Today is Wednesday, August 17th. I tried to hop in and stream a little bit earlier while I'm still kind of oversleeping and waking up in the middle of the afternoon. So hopefully we can start a little bit earlier today. For the accountability section, I suppose I started and made 2 episodes of Reign's Your Majesty, or Her Majesty, which is the sequel to Reign's, before eventually moving over to playing Reign's Game of Thrones. And the Reign's games are still a little awkward, but I feel like Her Majesty probably is improving slightly on that. I guess there's not anything else more to do. I just breezed through all of those things. We need to do a dual live spectating, and so we probably should just start with that, which just kind of starts with nothing, effectively. But mostly I spent yesterday doing a bunch of non-YouTube errands, and then I fervently wasted a bunch of time, or maybe didn't waste a bunch of time, tweaking my router, which I'm still terrible about making backups. And like, I need to make a change and then save a backup, or I need to save a backup before I make any changes whatsoever, and then every 5-10 minutes I need to make a new save, a new backup that doesn't overwrite the old backup, just out of safety precautions. Fortunately, nothing went wrong. It's just I was tweaking a lot of low-level stuff to just try and reduce the amount of latency in particular. Like, my latency is pretty high at 33 milliseconds at best, and I also was setting up some QoS quality of service settings on my DDWRT router using what is called FQ Codal Fast, and just slowly pulling down the bandwidth and limiting the bandwidth to reduce the amount of latency. It's like, at this point, it is preferable, and the whole point here, I also had some settings that I don't even know what necessary. Like, it's preferable to potentially lose maybe even 100 or 200. I'm losing potentially 100 megabits per second on the download consistently, because there never was any consistency on that in the first place. That's all the internet service providers go up to, in my case, 300 megabits per second, and sometimes it even goes higher than that. But like, the problem there is that it is just peaking and valleying, and when you're trying to watch Netflix, or when you're trying to watch a streaming service, potentially that was what was causing all the buffering. So now I'm hoping, by just keeping things consistent, it's kind of like having a speed limit on the road. Like, theoretically, we could have no speed limits on the road, and then drivers could drive as fast as they want to until there's a car in front of them or something else in front of them, and then they would have to slam on the brakes and slow down. Whereas if you just keep everybody going 60 miles per hour, that's also kind of a minimum assumption as much as a maximum assumption, and there's just more consistency there. So that's the hope. But yeah, there is a buffer bloat website, which is questionable whether buffer bloat is even a thing that you need to worry about ever. Like, some of the times these ideas get thrown out there, and there's not as much of a big deal about them as is made. or it's one theory that is not proven. Like, computer science is not so much like other science where you put out a thesis or a paper and then it gets peer reviewed and people copy and try and repeat it and then return their results, uh, proving whether they prove or disprove. In fact, even in regular science, there's very little of the system of other people actually copying and repeating tests because everybody is under such a massive time crunch and pressure to publish their own papers and their own discoveries that very rarely does anybody bother to check other people. So there's a lot of junk science papers out there. Uh, uh, but yeah, I wasted a bunch of time on that and probably should have played more Range of Majesty. I'm still having problems with my now second door smart lock, which 2 points makes a line, which really points towards the phone and the Samsung phone just having problems. Or it could be that the Samsung phone I have is also connecting to the Bluetooth in the car, so it's not disconnecting fast enough. Which, yeah, that could be part of the problem too. But at the current moment, I'm really just batting 0 as far as actually succeeding at having a successful auto unlock feature activate. And that's annoying, to say the least. Like, it really shouldn't be this hard to find some door lock to actually do what it says it's supposed to do. Well, let's see, 16 or 17. Let's go with 17. I'm not sure that this Link Summon card actually means anything or does anything. It is a Tri-Brigade card, so it might have some use, but I very rarely use it. And honestly, if the door auto unlock feature wasn't going to work, I kind of wonder if there shouldn't be a way to just schedule the door to unlock. Guess there is a way to do this, come to look at it. So yeah, I could simply program the door to unlock at specific times. So that's something, I guess. I will say the app for Wise is a little bit more updated than the Ultra Bolt. Yeah. It was it's a little bit more updated and has more features, so that there is a potential there to work around it. But boy, is that irritating, because particularly with the Wise smart lock, I need to actually play, or I'm going to run out of time here. It was getting to some really nice high security if it just worked. The door locks itself the instant it's closed. It's not on a timer. It can actually sense when the door is open or closed. So that would be something to also that would be very nice if it 100% with consistency would unlock as soon as you walk up to it and lock as soon as you close the door, giving just the tiniest of windows in which somebody could potentially walk in behind you or walk in front of you. But it has to work, and it has to work consistently, and that's the problem. Is it's just at the moment not working, and I don't know if it's the phone that's the problem or if it's the locks that are the problem. It shows kind of obviously though as to why there's on Amazon. I only saw 2 or 3 locks that actually promised an auto unlock feature, and then a bunch of smart locks that promised everything except for that. But yeah, this is irritating. In contrast, I was setting up in a little emergency SOS button system, pager system, and the first one I got totally didn't work as far as a 2 app, which is I'm still doing pretty good as far as all the cheap Chinese products that work throughout the TUI system anyways. So to have even just one be a problem is not that big of a deal. But I sent the first one back and got a different one that is more of the idea of a security system that's more programmable. A security system where you don't have to pay for monitoring, which is where you get ripped off, and then you'll also get ripped off if you go to any kind of security system company, because they will sell you absolute garbage equipment from 10 years ago and claim prices that are incredibly higher than what they actually are worth now. The whole monitored security system is basically useless. But with this device or collection of devices, which was really only about $30, I have one doorbell button that can be programmed to do something different. I have one remote key fob that has 4 buttons on it, all of which, except for the panic button, the SOS button, can be reprogrammed in some small way. And you also have a door sensor that it came with. And the secondary accessory devices connect over a like 430 megahertz wireless connection, so they're not Wi-Fi. They don't use as much battery, but that also creates a scenario where any kind of wireless security system has that fear that there would be a way to interfere with that, but that's probably not something that a normal person needs to be afraid of. And certainly it is way more convenient and puts a lot less holes in your walls to have wireless things that you just glue or sticky tape to the wall, and then it has a battery backed up little wall outlet that acts as a speaker and blinks lights, which had quite the collection, honestly, of different chimes. Although, in all fairness, I think most of them are useless chimes because they're musical. The one that sounds like a dog is probably the best of the collection. I don't think I'm gonna win here. But yeah, it definitely takes a level of creativity and programming tricks, certainly, to figure out how you would use it differently, to get it to be completely away from being a security system. If you just take it at face value and treat it as a security system, it's a lot better. But yeah, I'm gonna have to buy a second one of them as an experiment to see if I can get it to send notifications over the Wi-Fi as a shared device via Tuya over 2 different Wi-Fis. Also, I want to mix and match the things. It really is more of a starter kit, so if you were going to do it properly and actually have a 2-year security system, there are other sets that are more expensive that have way more door and window locks and way more like dedicated panel, which that certainly could be done if you're looking to make a security system and just continuously try and get everything in the Tuya environment. Which I still am definitely leaning towards saying that the Tuya environment is, even though it is this weird Chinese brand that's not even advertised, it's actually advertised as Smart Life, but Smart Life doesn't search very well. But yeah, I would definitely say that the Tuya connection is better than Smart Things. It's better than probably Apple HomeKit. Unless you have an Apple device, then you probably would still want Apple HomeKit compatibility. I am still putting everything on Wi-Fi instead of Zigbee, where arguably I should have just put everything on Zigbee. But Tuya can do Zigbee as much as it can do Wi-Fi. I am noticing that, like, my light bulbs that work really nicely do not like when I'm setting and resetting my Wi-Fi router multiple times, and they'll eventually just give up on connecting. But that's not particularly out of the norm. Like, and it is not often that is actually a problem if you aren't messing around. Alright. Let's go ahead and solve that. And I guess we do this. So every time you attack, it's going to stick a card in the graveyard, which doesn't particularly even hurt my strategy too much. Yeah, is there anything else as far as the recap to talk about, though? I'm still working on learning Excel to try and make a form. It's weird that I find Excel is the better Word document editor than Word is. that definitely, I think, speaks to the way my computer programming mind works, that I want everything to have a specific type class, like whether it's text or numbers, and each thing be in its own specific cell. And I want to be able to run formulas and functions on that information. Guess I can't attack twice. Interesting. I didn't even realize it was my turn there. But yeah, every time I think about, well, let's see if this one would make more sense as a document, it almost always is the answer is no. But that also almost certainly points down to the idea of it points down to the idea of my lack of education as far as using Word. So like, because I don't know how to use Word and its functions, I don't know the potential power in a Google Documents / Word. But also I just don't write things, so the functions in writing almost certainly do come more from a perspective of formatting and footnotes and headers and things like that. Like things that I really would use. But this whole WireGuard setup sheet that I'm trying to make also is pushing the levels of at least the mobile phone app of Google Sheets, because I'm putting like QR codes with hyperlinks behind them on them to download data directly from the Excel sheet, and if I click and drag even a little bit on my fingers with the touchscreen, it crashes the entire app, which very possibly is just a bug. One, two, three. One, two, three. I will destroy that card. Draw some new cards. Let's not go ahead and activate that. Change that to attack position. Change that to attack position. Put that down there. Suppose you start here by just summoning this the old-fashioned way. That'll let me banish this one. And then we'll just summon this. And then we'll activate this one, which will give us another 6,000, 7,000, yeah, 8,000. I think we've got a victory here. So we'll just take the victory and move on. I did play a little bit of this off screen, I suppose, and so I have been doing a little bit more than what I feel like I've been doing, but I'm still very slow and just not making content as much as I should. Speaking of content, I saw another YouTuber saying that they were going to stop putting shorts on one channel and they're going to make a separate shorts channel, which, you know, arguably that probably is the right way to do that, because even if the algorithm is separating those two at the moment, that it's going to try to integrate the two results as far as how many views you get on shorts versus how many views you get on other videos, and that is just going to wreak havoc with the algorithm and the number of views you get. But yeah, I think that's enough accountability section and rambling. We have a Video Games Chronicle article here saying a new multiverse bug damages Wonder Woman when she attacks opponents. The issue should be fixed soon, it says. However, yep, I suspect what at this point is going to happen is we're just going to constantly have announcements about multiversal stuff, and I should probably, in the same way that I would get rid of other kinds of annoyances, I probably at this point should stop reporting on multiversus news. If I was particularly struggling for time, I would consider doing that, certainly. Well, that didn't work out quite as well as I'd like, but that shouldn't matter too much. Oh, ooh. I didn't realize that canceled that for everybody. There's an argument of putting this face down instead. Oh man, that cancels everything. I didn't realize Call of the Graveyard was that useful. Yeah, but there is an argument for almost putting this face down to run some protection, or just only putting one down. It's probably best just putting only one down. More multiversus news. The Morty move list has been data mined, if you're interested. A now reference to a PlayStation PC launcher has been discovered in Spider-Man PC. I assume this is probably new, and they've just got the headline misspelled that poorly. The next batch of Xbox Game Pass titles have been announced. Coffee Tales, man, it's really hard to read by the logos. There's several games here: Elite Dangerous, Hades, Myst, NBA 2K22, Sons of Sojourner, Spiritfarer, 12 Minutes, 2 Points Hospital, and What Remains of Edith Finch and World War Z that will be removed. If anything, I think that probably kind of does highlight any issue that's not talked about enough, is how games disappear from the Games Pass list as much as they appear from the Games Pass list. Alright, let's do this. So you're losing as much as you're gaining each month. But if you're actually playing a game each month, as I get further and further away from the age of youth where you would potentially have a ton of free time, I start to question whether the current generation of kids actually have as much free time as you might think to actually play a whole bunch of different games. And they don't have to play them all, certainly, and shouldn't be trying to play them all. They should be much more flippant than that. But I feel like there is a higher chance, certainly, of kids being well-rounded these days compared to in the past. They just have more things to do. And it is definitely not a case where kids are allowed or expected to be the Dungeons and Dragons type kids that are in the basement for hours and hours and nothing else. It is now much more a case where your kid plays Minecraft and other Nintendo Switch video games, and then they also have soccer or baseball or both, and sometimes they're in a band. Those kinds of cliques that limited what you did, I think, don't exist as much anymore. So kids are more well-rounded and do more things, which inherently will mean that there's less time for video games. Of course, it would be up to the individual parent, but I would also hope that there's less parents these days that just think like all rock music is demonic, or Dungeons and Dragons is evil, or video games are evil. Like, there definitely were parents in the past, and even now we know there still are, that just hated anything kids liked because they were, for lack of a term that existed back then, Karens, or Kevins, whatever the male equivalent of Karen is. Let's see. Actually, might have been smarter to yeah, there might be a different way that I could have gone about this. But maybe not. That's 32,000. Do we have anything better? Or should we just go with this? Yeah, individually I think these cards will do more damage. And I was able to win there without even really paying attention. As for the new games coming to Xbox Games Pass, as before I started kind of rambling there, the new games are Coffee Talk, Midnight Fight Express, Exapunks, Opus Echo of a Star Song, Commandos 3 HD Remastered, Immortality, Immortals Phoenix Rising, and Tinykin. Which, some of these I don't recognize, like Midnight Fight Express, Tinykin, maybe Opus. These others I do recognize, and so that might be a good touchstone to say, yes, I have improved on my knowledge base, at least at some point, as far as recognizing the names of games and having kind of a general feel, not really a comprehensive by any means understanding of what those games are, but I feel like I am way more educated now ever since I started looking at every single game coming out. Whereas when I first started my YouTube channel, I knew the big games, like most people would know the big games, but I certainly would have had to look up a lot more independent games, and I was ignorant of more independent games. And it's almost impossible to know what you don't know, so most people are always at the same state of confidence as far as what they know and what they don't know, regardless of how accurate that is. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Astro's Playroom's developer has a next game that will be its biggest to date. The team has several smaller groups exploring multiple productions. That's all well and all good, but I don't feel like Astro's Playroom was that big at all. It really was more of a tech demo for the new controllers for the PlayStation 4 or 5. And did they ever even fix that issue? Because they took something out for the new controllers, which was maybe they took out the touchscreens or the back touchscreens as a feature to add a 3D tilt controls that were better. Or maybe they even took out haptic feedback. But it did create this odd choice where you either had to play with the old PlayStation controllers or the new DualShock controllers. Which I don't think they ever fixed that. I don't think they ever came out with yet a new version that had both functions. I guess not that many people cared either, because I didn't hear any major complaints around that. Alright, he's played Obelisk the Terminator, so this will be an interesting experiment to see, can you use can we get past Obelisk the Terminator if we can't target him? Well, there's only a couple things I can do anyway, so we'll play this off. It's unlikely he would actively summon a bunch more things if he's already got Obelisk the Tormentor on the field. So it might be more logical to simply surrender at this point and save yourself the time, if you're confident in the loss. But the game doesn't really let you do that, does it? Because it doesn't give you rewards if you surrender. I think it might be interesting if the game did just pop up a box saying you can now surrender and still be rewarded for your gameplay. If there was just kind of a random amount of time or cards that need to be played, something around that could be considered. Like, alright, so theoretically, activating this, I shouldn't be able to target Obelisk the Tormentor. I can only destroy this guy. Which also, I suspect, means that if I was to do this, it probably wouldn't work, but let's give it a try. So I am going to straight up toss this card. And then, since I'm not actively targeting that card, I was targeting multiple cards that worked. And like that, I just defeated the God card. And I didn't even really activate the stronger elements of my deck to do it. He's got only 2 cards, and he's probably, for lack of a better term, blown his wad. Let's see. Let's not activate here, because he's going to try and play a Joker card. Alright, let's activate this and discard this and destroy this because it has an effect. Yeah, he's definitely struggling here. Moving on with the news, Hades, NBA 2K22, Edith, 12 Minutes and others are going to leave Game Pass. We just talked about that. Like 2 articles back to back. Clearly, the same person wrote both articles, and maybe you should stagger that a little bit. It's not wrong to contextualize an article in 2 different ways, in my opinion, but I would say it's probably a bad idea to put the same articles back to back. Hey. This is an odd draw we have right now because we have yet to successfully get the cards we need to summon our final characters, but it may not be that necessary either. Let's see, Gamescom opening night live will feature a new look at Hogwarts Legacy, which is definitely an announcement for an announcement. Digital Modern Warfare 2 pre-orders will get a campaign a week early. Warzone 2 release date appears to have been released, according to Video Games Chronicles. We could just burn through news fairly quickly here. And let's see, is there anything more that can be done? Nope. So it'll just take me a couple turns. Like, worst case scenario here would be that he destroys everything on the, let's see, he destroys everything on the bottom here. And then I have very little on the top, on the monster row, versus the spells and trap row. But I think I win here. Video Games Chronicle says Call of Duty has been accused of plagiarizing skin design from Dr. Disrespect's first-person shooter, which Dr. Disrespect's first-person shooter seemed pretty early anyways. You can't help but say there is definitely some similarities here. If we got into like legal copyright similarities, I don't know if there's enough of a combination here, and I don't know which one of these is Dr. Disrespect versus the Call of Duties. There are distinctive slight differences, but glowing skull with a bluish hue with a cloak with a forehead skull cap piece with chest armor and maybe shoulder armor. They're definitely visually looks very close. And I think it is also worth pointing out that I believe it was Call of Duty. If it wasn't, I apologize. That also was accused of plagiarizing or being heavily influenced, and this is the danger is being heavily influenced, because if you're plagiarizing, you don't care. You know you're just straight up cheating and stealing. But being heavily influenced by another person who drew a panda standing on two legs, panda human, that's shooting a gun. So in less than a couple of weeks, we have had 2 accusations of plagiarism. I think both on Call of Duty. If not, then we have 2 first-person military shooters that have been accused of plagiarizing, which would speak to a larger industry-wide problem. And honestly, I don't think it really is an industry-wide problem. If anything, concepts should be stolen a lot more from games, because games often have good gameplay mechanics or concepts that people should copy, and usually it takes 4 to 8 years before you could even make a new game to steal that concept. But artistic styles should be not stolen or influenced by. Even there's far too many games out there that either have a hyper-realistic, if you want to call this hyper-realistic 3D style, or have a flat 2D, usually inspired by anime style. And there's very rarely, particularly amongst the AA's and AAA developers, any variation in that at all. Like, nobody is trying to be their own kind of artist. And that's, I guess, a point where capitalism corrupts art quite a bit, is that the video game companies, development companies, are hiring artists under a specific criteria for a specific look, instead of hiring artists that actually have either a bit more skill or a different style. A Pablo Picasso or a Salvador Dali, those types of artists would never have been hired by a video game company. They weren't particularly, at least in the case of Picasso, I'm fairly certain, he wasn't actually hired by much of anybody, and his art style was definitely a smack in the face in comparison to, I believe it was the Renaissance art style that was happening, and much more popular at the time. But yeah, the fact that people are being influenced, people are tracing, people are just copying and stealing, shows perhaps there needs to be more pay, better pay for artists in game development, and maybe that's an argument for unionization, but also a just different thought process as far as what you're hiring and how you're hiring and who you're hiring. And if you were a digital artist, I have no idea how you really get a job without going to some kind of art college and getting what is going to be close to a useless degree just to prove that you can put out a prodigious amount of art. And arguably, and this is not something that really is said as a sales points for unionization, but that there is a point where if an artist in a video game development company was in a union and couldn't just be let go at the end of a project for no reason, and couldn't just be fired without cause, or couldn't just be fired for some BS made up cause, if they really had to start to justify a reason to get rid of an artist, well, then that would make the rules that are the legitimate rules, the rules that the union isn't going to back you as much on, that much stronger. Inherently, plagiarism is probably not a big deal and probably won't guarantee that you're getting fired. Whereas if plagiarism was one of only 5 things that an artist in a video game company could be fired for, all of a sudden it becomes a much bigger deal. There is an argument for that 10 Commandments mentality, that had the 10 Commandments been 100 commandments like the U.S. constitutional law, then everybody would be breaking laws and not even knowing it, so people would not be as careful to make sure that they're not breaking laws. And yeah, that definitely is not something unions push as a sales pitch, but it really does potentially eliminate the clutter and the nonsense. Moving on with video game news, Xbox is seemingly teasing Death Stranding for PC Game Pass, which, okay. PC version was published by 505, which I guess that's informative. The Fallout TV show leaked set photos reportedly show Shelter 33, which this is not going to be part of the TV set photos, and it doesn't seem like they have any of the photos actually showing off, which you'd think you'd want to see that. Does it matter, I guess, is the question. If you see Shelter 33 or any part of the Fallout TV series in production, no. It really, you shouldn't be hyped about anything in production on Amazon, particularly any video game conversion from Amazon, because we just haven't even seen them try that yet. So there's no guarantee of success there. And I wouldn't be surprised by any means that if the Fallout TV series isn't like the Halo TV series or the Netflix Resident Evil live action series, where they're just getting the license to the names and the general ideas, and then they're making whatever thing they want to make and calling it Fallout. I don't even know what you do with a Fallout TV show, because inherently Fallout is a much more of a role-playing game than most role-playing games are these days, where there is just different choices you will make in your own playthrough, and the similarities are only going to be in the main storyline, particularly having recently played, or relatively recently played, Fallout 3. The storylines, main storyline stuff, would be the same for every player, but whether you blow up Megaton City or not is a major choice, and whether you just decide to kill people is a major choice, and the TV show would almost certainly not decide to kill off characters if there's any amount of characters that people care about. So what I would assume you're going for in a Fallout TV show is you're trying to make something like The Walking Dead, but with less zombies, instead having feral ghouls instead of zombies. But it is going to be mostly, I would assume, just try to be a lot of talking, a lot of people and relationships, a lot of drama and soap opera. Uh, we are at a dangerous point where video game shows are getting turned into just the new soap operas, um, done on the cheap and designed to keep people watching. Like, you can kind of boil down the events of Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 into a few major plot points. And so you potentially would just want to have those major plot points be the major plot points you hit in a season or two of the series. Unless you were going to do something really crazy and like record multiple scenes and have a choose your own adventure style show, which that might be interesting. Or if you're going to have almost like an anthology show where after a couple episodes it resets, or each episode is an alternate universe. Probably wouldn't want to do something like that, though. You probably want a consistent narrative. So then you would probably want to change the different playstyles into different characters. Instead, have somebody who has speech really high as one character, and then somebody who would have played Fallout with like laser guns and energy weapons be a different character. Somebody with big guns be a different character. Someone with small guns be a different character. You could certainly go down that whole special lineup and then have the 6 or 7 main characters where each one of them represents a character who has mostly maxed out that one attribute, and then you've got a team, and then it almost becomes this dream team of characters and different ways things could play. And then you probably don't have them work together too often, and instead you have them each in a different tribe. So intelligence is the person who would come out of the shelter, but like big guns would be like a super mutant tribe, and then small guns would be like a raider. And you could almost have a Game of Thrones aspect to it, where there are these different fighting groups. But that wouldn't be a terrible thought. But I am just kind of baselessly speculating on what a show is going to be, when really I shouldn't be spending any energy on it. Well, I guess I should also mention that I forget the name of it. The Tokyo equivalent of Comic-Con happened, and there was a lot more cosplaying this year than in the previous couple years, where I think it had been canceled or severely limited. So maybe a slight back to normalcy. There was speculation that there would be just a huge amount of crowds, but there really wasn't. So they were afraid that there would be kind of a mob rush off the subways in Akihabara, I think. And it didn't happen. Which I don't even know why that would have happened in the previous years, because Japanese tend to be fairly law-abiding, as it were, as far as not causing mad rushes. Even the anime cosplaying fans. It is very speculative whenever there is one of these big events with a lot of cosplayers showing off, as far as how many of those are professional cosplayers who were hired by the event, or how many were actual fans, whether or not they call themselves professional cosplayers or not. But I actually didn't see anything from the inside of the event, and so I don't think it is specifically too much about video games. One of the cosplayers dressed it up as a meat dish, a Japanese meat dish, and so he's got this head to toe covered suit that makes him or her look like meat, and the creator of Super Meat Boy retweeted that as a joke, saying that's what Super Meat Boy looks like on the Switch. I guess we'll leave this at this. What can I do here? I think I have to do this. Just in the turn. But what made me think of that and mention it is that there's an article here that the Pokemon Center London already has huge queues despite its booking system. And you can see here more of a London style of lining up in that you're not really lining up at all. There is an argument certainly around if you feel like you're in an ordered system, you might behave a little bit better. So it wouldn't have been a terrible idea to just put up some barriers, have fewer people standing side by side, whether they know each other or not. Kind of keep people separate from like bumping into each other, because you never know. Like standing in a line for an hour and bumping into a person could lead to a fight. Even having like tape on the floor and just keeping this into a nice row of 4 or 5 or 6 is probably a real smart idea. And you just don't want an incident, particularly around the Pokemon Center. So I would say this is a bad managerial decision. If I was running a business, I would tell the manager, go right now and to a business supply stuff and get some dividers. And if you can't find dividers and get them in here, some velvet ropes and poles and things like that. They're not even velvet ropes anymore. It's the pieces of plastic poles and retractable nylon dividers. But that should have been there day one anyways. And then the next step I certainly would think about is chairs. Like, this is a lot of people and a lot of chairs that you would have to rent out, but if it's going to take that long. But yeah, that definitely looks like a long line, and not the kind of line I would sit through or stand through. Seriously, can I not activate anything? He's gonna win this turn. Okay. Let's see what we can do here. Guess maybe you needed one thing in the graveyard. This is funny because this seems like it's been changed. So it can only take things out of the graveyard, when previously it felt like it could do more. How many cards do I have? If this is gonna save me, it's gonna be very close. And arguably he's just gonna cancel it. Now can I activate this other one? Nope, you can only activate one. Let's see. Dying Light 2 Story DLC Blade Ties gives us first teaser trailer and details. I have to remind myself which game they're even talking about here, because I first thought they were talking about the Dead by Daylight game, the asynchronous multiplayer game, but Dying Light 2 is actually the survival game. You have like a skull mask and people fighting, and that seems to be about it. Alright, let's do this. Please be enough. I don't think it will be. Yeah. This deck allows you to do quite a bit. But arguably it's worse than even the deck I'm playing as far as the number of actions you can take per turn. There wasn't enough focus really around Dying Light 2, or good reception around Dying Light 2, which kills any major desire for me to play like Dying Light 1 at the moment. I probably should play it, but then there's a long list of games I probably should play. And I am dangerously getting closer and closer towards just playing the same old things because I want to. Like Portal Reloaded is an example of that, and well, last chance. Destroy that one. Destroy that one. See what this does before we activate this. Let's do this. One, 2, 3, 4. Summon that. The question is this one where you can toss? Yeah, this is the one that cuts your attack in half. So we need to get rid of this, I think, first. And then just hope that this one I can just attack the order in which things activate seems to be kind of set in stone. I didn't get to banish that card, so he's potentially going to defeat me here, and then I'll have nothing left to do. Let's see. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says the Skylanders and Crash Bandicoot Studio Toys for Bobs is teasing a new game, which looks a lot like previous Skylanders games, if that's what this screenshot is, but this may just be a screenshot of an old Skylanders game. Tweet an image which is viewable below. What is this image? It's not showing. Yeah, Video Games Chronicles and the ad blocking seem to be integrated in such a way that the ad blocker is blocking non-ads. Entangled might be another better term. Alright, we'll try this again. Them making a new game, not particularly a huge surprise or anything that amazing. See, now here's the problem that I've just made is this guy could potentially just be attacked by this guy, and it could win that way. A new Tales from the Borderlands release date and details have leaked. Gearbox's narrative-driven adventure game looks for an October release, which that seems a little early. It definitely feels like there are too many, like, frankly, too many things. It's apparently going to be called New Tales from the Borderlands Deluxe Edition. I assume that this is new content, if it says new, and isn't just re-releasing the old Tales from the Borderlands series for like a third time. But remember, we had Borderlands 3, that was kind of a flop, and that was only a couple years ago. Then we've had Tiny Tina's Wonderlands as its own separate game, on top of them reselling the Tiny Tina's Wonderlands DLC from Borderlands 2 as its own separate thing, which caused a lot of confusion. But that was just a couple of months ago that when that came out, maybe 6 months at most. So now if we have yet another thing coming out in October, they're flooding the market with Borderlands content, which that might play into the slight theory that I have where Randy Pitchford has lost interest in Gearbox, and we know he lost interest. He sold it to Embracer Group, and he's trying to go Hollywood, and I don't know if they'll actually succeed in that as far as the Borderlands movie. He has been better about being silent and not causing controversy lately, and so we should applaud him for that, I guess. But I don't know if there is a strong leadership either through Embracer Group or whoever is now in charge of Gearbox in Dallas, or Gearbox in Canada, Quebec, or any other Gearbox offices Embracer Group wants to rename or create. And arguably, maybe the problem is the fact that they opened that new studio in Quebec. Of course, the speculation up until this point was that they were going to close the the Dallas original office completely and eventually just replace them with cheaper labor in Quebec. Although I don't know if Quebec really is cheaper labor. I can't say I'm particularly hyped on the idea of a new Tales from the Borderlands, even though I did enjoy Tales from the Borderlands. It would be a new, I assume somewhat like a Telltale game still, experience when I'm fairly burnt out on Telltale game experiences, and it would be in the Borderlands universe when I still have Borderlands the pre-sequel to play and Borderlands 3, which I don't even know if I've purchased that. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says Overwatch account merging has been detailed ahead of cross-progression launch. The upcoming sequel will also support cross-play, which really begs the question as to what are the new features in Overwatch 2 if progression is still doable in Overwatch 1 and crossplay. Well, I guess crossplay is not crossplay between the previous game and the sequel. It's crossplay between playing on the PlayStation and the Xbox or PC, which arguably that's going to cause its own problems when everybody on PC with mouse and keyboard is just way better than everybody playing with controllers. Let's see. And in our last Video Games Chronicle article we have here, it says a cancelled Iron Man game from the studio behind Just Cause has been revealed. Disney demands would have broken Avalanche Studios, the co-founder claims. Which, yeah, it's believable. Disney has Disney hasn't been the best as far as dealing with or allowing games to be made, and arguably you don't even know if it really is Disney in that case or whether that would have been Marvel in that case. And who knows, like, it's fairly easy to say company politics or Disney demands were too high. And that it's fairly easy to blame the other party. Disney and Marvel reportedly wanted Avalanche to staff up rapidly in order to complete the game more quickly than originally planned, but Sundberg said agreeing to this would have broken the studio completely. I was a mess by the end. It was like shortening development time, increasing budget. We would have to hire 70 to 80 people to the team that would have had the responsibility to find a new project for. But the development time was shortened down so much so that it was impossible to do. I would have broken the studio completely if I'd agreed to that. And I can't, like, fully disagree with him. Like, if you're a video game development company and you have 100 people and you needed that, and you were getting pressure to hire 100 new people, that's a nightmare scenario, really. Like, you can hire a couple people and train them and get them acquiesced to the company culture and how things are done, and get everybody up to speed so everybody's on the same team. But if you hire 80 to 100 people, you're effectively adding a whole new team that is going to not know how things are done. You're going to have to do a ridiculous amount of training, a ridiculous amount of integration. It's going to very much be an us versus them scenario, and that's why you see things like what is it, Gearbox Montreal or Gearbox Quebec, I think it is. That's why you see new offices getting started under the same name instead of just the same offices hiring the same amount of people. just physically in an area, the idea of there being 80 to 100 other programmers in that area is fairly low, unless you're in like Redmond, Washington, or maybe Austin, Texas, maybe Hollywood. But yeah, you just can't scale up that much. And remember, a publisher, in this case, Marvel and Disney, they're going to totally abandon you the second the game is out and sold. They'll do their legally required advertisement to make a profit, but they're not going to guarantee you another project. They're not going to guarantee to pay staff's wages after the fact, where some publishers are paying the staff's wages at the beginning. That was a really long game for just a loss. So then you have to effectively hire 80 to 100 people that you're planning on firing, whether that you tell them it's a temp job or not. And if they know it's a temp job, which they probably will figure it out very quickly in the programming industry, that they're not likely to have any kind of loyalty or work that hard. Like, honestly, even one bad employee can do major damage to a business and a working atmosphere. The odds of not getting at least one bad employee out of 100 is almost zero, so you would have to deal with that too. Yeah. And I wouldn't be super against the idea of putting on the tinfoil hat and saying that these demands were being made intentionally to break the deal or rewrite the contract, as it were, just to break the deal, or to actually ruin Avalanche Studio. Like, one of the best ways to defeat a competitor in business is to do direct business with them, make an order from them, and then demand the order at a cheaper price, or you won't pay. That happens a lot. Walmart does that a lot, where they make giant orders that then they demand changes on the price or the shape of the packaging, the size of the packaging. It's just always a dishonest thing. Even if you have a contract, suing a giant corporation like Walmart is very, very hard to do. And I guess that is a warning I would say, is that if you are a small business, be very wary about doing business with even other small businesses. Any kind of big orders, you need the money up front. You need to come off, frankly, a little bit shady and say, I need all this money up front before I even take this. The idea of deposits or non-refundable deposits, maybe you can meet them halfway there, but it's fairly easy to give somebody a big order and then have them think those big orders are going to keep on coming when there's no guarantee of that at all, and have them scale up and over invest. But you can certainly go the other way too, where you underinvest and you're just running this tiny little business that has no chance of ever growing because you haven't put the advertisement into it and the massive amount of money you might have to put into advertising. So it's a delicate balance, and you need a lot of sense. I won't even say common sense. You need kind of an advanced level of sense around that. and you need to get lucky in general. I think we'll go back to just doing the Gamatsu article first, at least a couple of them, because I still have only a few games that I could look at. And really, I should go through the news articles somewhat first. Sony Interactive Entertainment and Ballistic Moon are working on a new game according to a motion capture actor's resume. And this is a Gamatsu article. Multiversus adds DC's Black Adam and Stripe from Gremlins. And you can see the animation style here showing Black Adam as not really The Rock, and Stripe here being much more cartoony than the live action puppet in the show would have looked like. Although in all fairness, you have to kind of go cartoony with all these characters for them to even make any visual sense. Same was true for like Arya Stark being in Multiversus, or Wonder Woman being a cartoony version of Wonder Woman. This guy's doing a lot of things, trying to draw cards. Is it gonna let me play? Activate this. Destroy all spells and traps. We'll wait for that to resolve. Nintendo Switch Online has added Wave Race 64. A lot of these games I am somewhat nostalgic for, but when you go back and look at Wave Race 64 and look at these terrible polygons, it's not really a game that you want to play as much as it's a game you would wish there was a new version of. And there is that Kondenkawa Jet Girls game. I believe I mispronounced the first word there. The Jet Girls game, though, is effectively a Wave Race 64 type game with also shooting as shooting water guns, I think, but also with anime girls that lose their clothing based on getting wet. It's like some kind of electronical system, so damage. So that goes in kind of a different direction than you might want. But there hasn't really been any other jet ski games since Wave Race 64. And arguably it was popular simply because there was a lot of copies of it, and the Nintendo 64 just didn't have that much competition. And now it may be much more of a case. Wow, it took that long to resolve. This guy's not moving very fast. But yeah, I wish there was more jet ski games. Moving on, Sky Children of the Light is coming to the PlayStation, which I'm not sure if this is the game I'm thinking of, where you have to play co-op or not, because yeah, I think Sky Children of the Light is the game I'm thinking of. And I tried to play that like twice, and twice I was uninterested in playing it because there's just so much of this co-op, and you couldn't just play solo mode if you wanted to. And so you'd have people, particularly at the beginning, which is as far as I got, who would just solve the puzzles in front of you and take control of how the game moves away from you. In a lot of ways, it is a game that I think is just actively trying to look like the other PlayStation game with the character with the long red scarf. And arguably that game also would benefit from having a more of a single player experience. But it also would probably hurt the experience they wanted you to have, as far as subtly logging in other players and then logging them out and making it kind of seem like you were really just co-oping with one player the whole time. Yeah, that is definitely one of those games that, as a fan of solo player experiences almost exclusively, I'm not the target audience and my experience would be different. I can't even remember the name of that game. I want to say Scarf, but I don't think that was the name of it. Even though you did have this long scarf that grew. Might have been called Flow or something like that. It definitely was like a one-word thing. Alright. It's going to be fairly hard to pull off everything here if this guy is going to have something he can activate and he's just going to have to hit cancel each time. Or a side-scrolling adventure game called The Company Man is coming to the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One on August 26th. Which is an interesting image, but I'm having a hard time telling whether this is actually an enemy or not. Alright, how many cards do we have in here? I think enough. But arguably, if he can just cancel this effect also and destroy that card. Yep. Can't do anything now. Let's see what the Company Man is all about. Seems like a platformer. You're working for a company, hack and slashing. It seems like other people that work at the company are attacking you, turned into monsters. There was another game that was somewhat similar to this, that had more of a Japanese feel to it. I forget the name of it. We may be seeing, this looks interesting enough, we may be seeing the beginning of some anti-work movement actually in video game development. I don't suspect it will be too many games like that though, because there's very few people I think that work in the game industry that for particularly long amounts of time actually worked at a regular business, whether that's like Walmart, customer service, things like that, where it would be monotonous and mind-numbing and crazy involving. While programming does have its own problems, it is a field that does not tend to have as much BS or lack of creativity in it. And so, frankly, of all the people who have jobs, game programmers have pretty nice jobs. Which at a certain level the anti-work crowd will say, well, it doesn't matter if you have a nice job or a bad job. At a certain point, work is sucking the life out of you regardless, and game programming certainly does that with its long hours and high demands and high stress. And that humans in general are not designed to enjoy laboring or working for another or working even for themselves to a high extreme. And we are getting to a point where automation probably won't replace video game programming anytime soon, but can replace a significant percentage of jobs, which means fewer people actually need to work for a society to stay working. You could do universal basic income and have more part-time programmers and part-time artists and part-time things. Yeah, I think a significant number of people, if they had a universal basic income that covered their needs fairly well, would go back to learning how to program or work in the game industry a little bit more. There'd be more people willing to work part-time, at least, in the game industry, which would reduce the amount of hours potentially. But I would say the game industry is probably one of the last industries to really feel the effects of a UBI. Jobs that pay fairly high are not going to feel the effects of the idea of implementing universal basic income very quickly. Like a Tom Cruise movie production is going to not see, when you're not going to see actors like Tom Cruise all of a sudden stop taking movie jobs that pay them millions and millions of dollars in favor of a basic income that's going to pay them just thousands of dollars. But you might see fewer desperate people willing to be background actors for $10 a day or something ridiculously low. Although I can't imagine there's a single movie that was really ruined by background actors being terrible. But it would, for a Hollywood example in particular, remove the desperation and the homelessness issue somewhat in LA. People desperate to be actors. They could certainly, and if UBI existed, they could stop taking side jobs and just focus on becoming better actors and taking more auditions. Anyways, I'm rambling. Gamatsu says Lego Brick Tales launches in Q4 of 2022 for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Solve puzzles with a new brick-by-brick building mechanic, which this seems like an expanded version of the idea of that previous Lego game that wasn't made by TT Games. And potentially this is a case where this is where Lego games are going, and the TT games are either going to be their own separate thing or not even exist at all, depending on the merger with Warner Brothers and AT&T. You definitely are seeing, yeah, this is Clockstone Studio and Thunderful. Just kind of generic minifig characters and generic locations. In a lot of ways, this location definitely looks similar to a location in Lego Worlds, which Lego Worlds was still garbage. So this might be them taking generic concepts of Lego Worlds and adding it and redoing it from the ground up. And yeah, this definitely feels like there's an actual physics system here, which is not something I was expecting at all. And you have several of these little squares that look similar to like what the Minecraft, the very first Minecraft set was, where it was just a square. Need to play slightly differently this turn, since I discarded a card. Well, I guess I don't need to play slightly differently then, because that'll cancel that. which then the question is begged, does Ash Blossom cancel that ability? Yes, it does. And activate effect. 3 cards. 1, 2, 3. Bring about this guy. Activate effect to remove card. That doesn't quite get where I want to go, so I'm just gonna go ahead and trade off these cards again. And yeah, there's nothing more to do, so we go into battle and do this, in the turn. Pretty much won. Here's Bricktails, which is already on the fault list. I've definitely wanted to see if the idea of actually building with Legos in video game form could ever actually be achieved. That's something TT Games really never tried, and it's something that probably slightly rubbed Lego the wrong way as far as how the TT Games were fairly popular, and yet that you don't have the actual Lego building process in TT Games. Instead, you have just a accelerated animation to approximate that. Moving on, Dakar Desert Rally launches October 4th for the PS4, PS5, PC, Xbox One, and Xbox Series. It'll be available in standard and deluxe editions, which that looks interesting, certainly, as far as a racing game. I don't know if Dakar as a racing series, though, is enough. It seems like it's a lot of desert racing, but also some racing in mud, which seems weird. Yeah. Right. Let's see. My hope here is that now I can activate this, and so I've held off this trap for as long as would make sense. Summon that by sacrificing all of these again. I wish there was an opportunity here to vary up the decks I'm playing, because this is getting kind of ridiculously redundant, and it's getting down to the point where people can just see what I'm doing, and if you've been watching for even a week or two, you pretty much know the strategies. Add that to the graveyard. Bash that card. Concede. Alright, I do need to play off screen. I will fully admit that. But it has been also now in 44 minutes. And so I think we need to call that for today. Have we done all these? Yes. We have 4 days left to do all of these, but we have 1 day left to get into level 20. So it does kind of feel like that's likely not going to happen. And yes, I have more solo modes. I've been playing this goblin mining game that was advertised to me, and it is very much you spend a couple minutes on it here and there, but you mostly just set it up and then come back in a couple hours and it plays itself. But then there is a big difference between Destiny Child, which has a lot more visuals that are interesting as far as lewd anime waifus, and that being a game that plays itself, and a goblin mining game where you're just seeing these little goblins hammer on rocks, and then the numbers just get bigger and bigger. Let's see what we got here. So I really should stop playing it, but I will give it a little bit more time. And it is much more obviously a game built around showing ads than Destiny Child at least used to be. Destiny Child now has some decent amounts of ads that you actually need to look at, and having an ad blocker doesn't benefit you because they give you decent rewards for looking at the ads on Destiny Child, where you don't really get that on the goblin mining game. There's also, I guess, a difference in that Destiny Child caught my heart way before it started suggesting I look at ads, whereas most games, like the goblin mining game, immediately want to shove ads in your face in the first day or so, and they want to shove a lot of ads in your face. We're still not really making a lot of progress as far as these legacy cards, just using them up. But we are making decent progress, I think, as far as collecting cards. The problem there, of course, is that there's just so many cards at 6,000. Even if each of these 200 packs gave me a unique card, I'd only have 2,000 potential unique cards. Whereas, yeah, the 7,000 cards here, there's still plenty we don't have. Still plenty that are not at a level where we could discard some extras. Dismantle all extra cards. Yeah. Not a single extra crafting point to be had opening all those legacy packs, which arguably, maybe that's because legacy cards cannot be turned into currency. Notably here, we have gone an hour and 15 minutes streaming, and I have not had a single network hiccup at all as far as playing Yu-Gi-Oh! So either I'm having a really good day with Yu-Gi-Oh! Or my network setting tweaks actually did benefit me and improve things. Let's burn through the news here. We don't need to really talk about the Xbox Game Passes again. A game called Little Orpheus for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC launches September 13th. I am really potentially turning into the Micro Machines man, or the person who reads all the disclaimers and drugs, just talking super fast when naming all of these drugs. Yeah. This looks like it might be good. too. I'm glad we're starting to get announcements for games that actually feel like they're going to actually be something. Here we have a JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R system introduction trailer, which I'm sure fans of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure might be interested in that. Arguably, this art style might be a little bit off of what the actual anime or comic book art style is. It's not super off, but it does feel like they are trying to take the 2D models and scan them into 3D wireframes, which is creating some odd stylized things. Odd shadows on the stylized things. But I mean, how can you complain one bit when every other game just looks so similar? 50 playable characters from the JoJo universe. Inherently, me playing this game though would be like the equivalent of like me playing Dragon Ball if I had never seen a single episode of Dragon Ball. I wouldn't be able to recognize any of the characters. Like, I recognize Hamon there, and that I feel like was the first JoJo's character, but also I feel like he might be set far in the future in a Mad Max universe. But like each generation of the JoJo's universe introduces a different JoJo character, and it kind of resets everything. So you have to be really a fan of the art style and a fan of the craziness and a fan of the fighting more than fans of specific characters, I think. Let's see. The Saints Row reboot has a story trailer, which I'm not sure we've seen this one before. Rated M for mature for nudity. Interesting. This would be definitely a second attempt, as far as we've got to introduce these characters, and we're gonna try really hard to make you like them. Take a look here at this animation, how it's just jumping between different characters to show that the character you're going to play as may have a canonical appearance as this, but you're going to be able to just change it to look like anything you want. Which that'll be slightly weird, and the customized version of characters versus the pre-made versions of characters do look way different. Yeah, it definitely feels like it was a last minute decision to say, hey, we're actually going to allow you to just play as a customized character instead of forcing you to play as our pre-made character. And that only fixes 1 out of 4 characters, because there was frankly a complaint about all 4 of the main characters, and I don't know if you can customize. I'm not saying an indication here you can customize the other characters. So if you still don't like the shirtless DJ, I assume gay guy, if you still don't like the nerdy long-haired girl, if you still don't like the other character that I don't even remember, the smooth black kind of gay, probably gay guy too. That was really the problem, is that there's not just a stereotypical straight white male amongst the group for anybody to even slightly relate to. Like, we're getting to the point where the wokeness is getting so extreme that we are going to have to start demanding a token straight white male in games just to keep things balanced. Like, even like, no matter how you cut it, I would say at least 30% of the United States population still is straight white females, straight white males. If you include gay white males and females, you're definitely going more into the over 50% of the population, with the remainder being divided between different races and genders. Moving on, though, Soul Hackers 2 Devil Summoning and Combat trailer is available if you want to check that out. I think I'll skip that. A co-op beat-em-up game called Jitsu Squad is coming to PlayStation 5 and 4, Xbox Series and 1, Switch, and the Switch in quarter of 2022. Yeah, I think I could say that. I could say PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox Series and 1 and Series. Jitsu Squad, like ninjutsu. Looks like you're playing as kind of comedic animals, which, yeah, we don't see a lot of games like that either. Like, you definitely would have beat 'em up games and arcade games that were kind of like Battletoads, particularly in the arcades where you were basically selling the same fighting games over and over again, so you needed to make the characters look different. So this is intriguing, to say the least, to see what may be a Battletoads game but doesn't have that history or requirement of actually being difficult like Battletoads, nor does it require the characters to be limited to just being for Battletoads or Ninja Turtles. And Ninja Turtles is another example of a game that is where you're seeing more anthropomorphic animals. We're seeing less and less of that advertised to kids these days, I suppose. Labyrinth of Zangetsu is coming to the West in quarter 1 of 2023, according to Nikamatsu. It's a dungeon RPG game, apparently. Kind of looks like a very cheap dungeon RPG game, although maybe the art style is just giving it that appearance. If you told me this was a remake of an old game or just a very old game being ported, I would believe you. Let's see. Life is Strange Arcadia Bay Collection for the Switch launches September 27th. This was also known as the Life is Strange Remastered Collection, but I wonder if it's not going to be so much remastered on the Switch. And they did come out and say that Life is Strange is kind of going back to... I don't remember. Did they say that all future Life is Strange games will be their own standalone games, or are they going back to more of a connected universe and connective narrative? I think they said they're going back to connective narrative because the standalone Life is Strange games didn't sell that well, and arguably the standalone games just shouldn't have not been called Life is Strange. If anything, this Don't Nod company, if they were acquired by the makers of Control, you could take the Life is Strange universe and connect it into the Control universe and just make it a whole SCP connected universe, which is what they're already trying to do with Alan Wake anyways, and they're calling that the Alan Wake universe. That'd be an interesting merger canonically and storyline wise. It probably would be a mess in actuality how it's implemented. The game Evil West has been delayed to November 22nd. Earth Defense Force 5 shipments of digital cells have topped 1 million, which I think even that's an accomplishment for as ugly as the Earth Defense Forces games look. They are progressing far too slowly as far as making Earth Defense Force games that are good, and moving far too fast as far as how many different Earth Defense Forces games have been made. The Dio Field Chronicle has a world explanation trailer, which maybe I should watch that. This is a JRPG game. Yeah, story obviously is going to be fairly complicated if you need a world explanation trailer before the game's even out. Alright, let's go through some of the games on Steam. I did find a tab, by the way, to turn off the hover to pop up, but I have to reboot Chrome, and I didn't want to do that because of some videos I uploaded to YouTube and haven't marked off that they have been deleted. Cheese Quest here doesn't look good enough. But I do need to update Chrome, and everybody needs to update Chrome because apparently there's a 0-day exploit that needs to be updated, although that may require you to go to the About settings and check for an update instead of just resetting Chrome. Well, I'll give this a follow. Wait, why does this game not have a purchase? What? Interesting. Why does this game not have a purchase button? And yet it doesn't say coming soon either. I didn't think you could do this. Well, at that point I'll put it on the follow list and see. Let's just scroll down here. Yeah, I thought by default you had to have a coming soon if you didn't put anything else there. The idea that you could put nothing there is pretty crazy. I still have the adult games showing, so yeah. And at a certain point I wonder if I may just live with that. This is possibly something of interest, so I'll give it a follow, but I'm not going to give it a YouTube short. I need to update the YouTube shorts, definitely. Though. Underworld Recard. Not quite visually polished enough for me. Let's see. Nothing here. Let's just burn through all these games very quickly. I guess the question is really just how much can I push it? How many times can I accidentally have a single frame of pornography, even if it is just a zoomed down frame here of a screenshot of pornographic images from an adult game, show up on the stream? Because I have the whole fade out too, so it's not like it instantly cuts, which is very harsh. It does fade in and fade out, so even if I on the very first frame saw, oh, this is not YouTube family friendly, and came over here, there's still about 3 seconds in which it's visible. 3 seconds in a 3-hour video shouldn't be used against you, certainly, and so far it hasn't. I haven't gotten any kind of adult content warnings or strikes, but one is all you really need, and pushing it doesn't seem to really get you that far. Like the MXR mods YouTuber is probably the one that I know of that pushed it the furthest, and in the end it didn't, I think, help his channel too much. City block builder here. No, I think there's not an actual game to this. Let's see. Climb challenge castle. So it's kind of like an Assassin's Creed game if it was just the climbing part. I'm going to put this on the follow list and see if anybody reviews it. It's probably a garbage game. If this was a tech demo, I would believe it. Just like asset flip a castle, asset flip a character, and do a climbing challenge. That does feel like something you could do. Here we have a game called Cut the Rope Replica, which probably, if I was guessing, is just straight up stealing the cut the rope art assets. Or at the very least it's intentionally creating name confusion here with cut the rope, although the phrase cut the rope probably isn't trademarkable or copyrightable. The same way here, you have a game called 3D Pac-Man, where Pac-Man probably is copyrightable and trademarkable, and this definitely looks terrible as far as a Pac-Man game. Here we have a mobile port of a game. Here we have another mobile port of a game. This may all be coming from the same developer. Nope. So we just have a collection here of a couple of garbage games coming out on Steam. Is that because Steam has started approving garbage games again? Or is that because somebody has made several false companies, false identities to publish multiple games on Steam at the same time? Let me see. Here we have an adult game with a uncensored patch, but I feel like the screenshots and the videos are uncensored too, so it seems weird that you would have a uncensored patch when the video is uncensored and the game ends up in the adult section anyways. If anything, I think that probably highlights that there is just a misunderstanding of how this system is supposed to work. I don't know if Valve knows how this system is supposed to work as far as this, but you have this cuties hacked. Oh no, someone stole my photos. And it seems like it's probably either a game where you're drawing lines around photos and making squares to remove parts of it, or it's a ball bouncing game. I think it's probably lines around the photos. Honestly, I'm having a hard time figuring out what kind of game it is. Visually, though, you can tell it's pretty ugly, except for when it wants to show you anime girls. And that's it. And that Netflix Cuties show has ruined using the phrase cuties for probably an entire generation. Because now when I hear the word cuties, all I hear is, oh, well, that's a cutie is somebody who is underage and underdressed and acting precociously in a sexual nature. A dinosaur hunt game. It's not a terrible thought. We'll wait till it actually comes out. We've got a Japanese visual novel that doesn't support English. This is something I definitely wanted to keep an eye out for, though, is to start to see how many Japanese games in particular are coming to Steam that aren't being translated. Kazan's a cat-themed city game. I'll put this on the fall list just as a potential kid-friendly game, although arguably I don't know if I have really as much reason to look for kid-friendly games. By the time kids play video games and get video game things, they're past the point of wanting really, really young products. I don't know if I want to give this a follow or not. I guess I have to be cautious and say yes. Give it a follow. It's a free-to-play game. Project Possession. I'll put this on the follow list. It's a online PvP game, but no in-app purchases. I don't know if I'm making YouTube shorts around games that have YouTube in-app purchases. I probably am. I probably am just going to be so desperate to make YouTube shorts that I'll let a lot more things slide. Dungeons and Dragons Adventure, Rogue's Choice, CCS. I'm going to put this on the follow list just to see if maybe that's something people actually care about, and that this might be an official Dungeons and Dragons game. You know, Idle Champion here doesn't look too terrible either if it was out. We're still running into the coming soon problem. I would save myself probably 30 minutes every stream minimum if I was just looking only at games that didn't have coming soon in the title. But I tried to program it to do that and it didn't work, and I've moved on to a bunch of other side projects. This looks interesting, but it's a prologue. So it probably will be a while before I would get back to the idea of trying to reprogram it. This is interesting. See, the game says it contains some sexual hints, kissing, flirting, descriptions, sexy and high revealing clothes. All characters are 18 years or older. So you have this Arkanoid game called Pong Pong Girl, and yet it's in the adult section, seemingly for no reason. They've tagged it, or somebody's tagged it with hentai sexual content, but honestly, I don't think there actually is any adult content in here. You just wouldn't sell your game in the adult section and then say all it has is some sexual hints, kissing, flirting, descriptions, sexy and highly revealing clothing. Perhaps the problem here is that the content contained in this game includes naked or pornographic content, common adult content. But then this is also English, Japanese, and Chinese, and I can't help but wonder if this is actually a Chinese game trying to sell itself like there's more in it than there actually is. That's the only reason this would make some sense. As an actual Arkanoid clone, it's not really focusing on the Arkanoid much, which is probably a good idea, but it does seem like it has a whole secondary system going on. The Arkanoid doesn't look amazingly great with this green background, but it doesn't look terrible. The animation of the characters is maybe a little inconsistent even between the two girls, but it's not looking awful either. Little League World Series Baseball 2022. We'll give that a YouTube short. Spirit of the Island. I guess I'll give this a YouTube short, but I won't actually put it on a follow list because I'm not personally interested in it. Self-Delusion. Looks like a decent horror game, so we'll do that one too. Office Racer. Doesn't look that way. One thing I was hoping though is that I would start running into pages where the screenshots would load in always. Maybe that will happen, maybe that won't. I think a lot of times that may have more to do with just how many massive numbers of tabs I've opened in a row. Idle MMO Simulator coming soon. I think we can say no to that. Robo Revenge. I guess it's inherently better to just go through all the games that came out on Steam, then go back to the Gamatsu and then GameDeveloper.com articles. I don't. It's a co-op action game, 1 to 4 players, fighting robots in kind of a top-down twin stick shooter. Alright, I'll give that a chance. Whereas this, I definitely won't give a chance to. This. What's funny here is you've got just like naked flat images So is this YouTube family friendly when it's just a gray blob Barbie doll? I would lean towards yes, but maybe not. It's such an awful animation style, and yet there's an emphasis here to try and do this. This feels like this would have been drawn by a 12-year-old who's never even seen a naked woman. 12-year-old boy, just trying to draw his own pornography because he doesn't have any access to to any others. Which, at a certain point, yeah, kids shouldn't have access to pornography, but they should have access to medical, educational information. If I was a parent, I would not be upset with a kid, say, looking up genitals or breasts on Wikipedia and being shown images of a non-sexual nature of genitals or breasts for educational reasons. I don't think we need to be like the old days where you weren't even allowed to look at your own body or mention it in polite company. This game memorabilia feels a lot closer to what I would have expected a Alone in the Dark reboot to look like, and it's kind of shocking that this is not the direction that the Alone in the Dark reboot went, but I really don't care either. Like, they should have done something with the Alone in the Dark name, and what they're doing is probably the smarter move than making something that doesn't look brand new and doesn't look amazing. Going AAA on Alone in the Dark is probably a smarter idea than staying single A or double A, even if the original Alone in the Darks were kind of closer to being single A, double A games. Back to the Gamatsu articles, we have Yu-Gi-Oh! Rush Duel, Dawn of Battle Royale, Let's Go Rush, launching December 1st in Japan. You've got some massive holographic cards here being shown. 3 secret Rush Duel cards. So these are different kinds of cards. And it's hard to really tell how this would compare to the same cards in the Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. But yeah, still feels like it's pretty much the same cards, but they may have made the amount of space for the art bigger. Thinner borders are definitely something you can do more of nowadays. Of course, they have to have this different color so they don't get confused from regular cards. But yeah, you can do larger pictures, spend less time. If they were going to really reboot the series, they'd probably get rid of the star system completely, because you could just limit that as far as you must tribute something to if it has over a 2,000 attack, you must tribute 1. If it has over 3,000, you have to tribute 3. 4,004. You could get rid of the star system. You could potentially get rid of the affinity system or the different types of card systems. Also, it's worth pointing out though that this is written in Japanese, so it takes less space. So if you're going to translate these cards over to English, the text may take a lot more space. They're not doing anything crazy like having the cards transparent so you can overlay them, or it doesn't really feel like they're changing much of anything else. I don't know what the rules as far as Rush Duels are, but cards themselves look very similar. Feels like it's been a while since we've had a Famitsu review score. So issue 1759, Disco Elysium getting 32 out of 40, Earth Defense Force 6 getting 34 out of 40, Idol Manager 29 out of 40, pretty awful. Soul Hackers 2, 38 out of 40, that is really high, so they're very happy with that one. Sword and Fairy Together Forever, 30 out of 40, pretty low. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge 31 out of 40. So usually I say 33 is about the point where a game is decent. Only Soul Hackers 2 out of this fairly large group of reviews gets over 33. And usually you only get about 3 reviews, and we have 6 here. So I wonder if, for one reason or another, Famitsu took a week off as far as putting out issues. Maybe it was Golden Week. I don't think it was Golden Week, but I can see them taking a week off and then coming back with twice as many reviews. Melty Blood Type Lumnia has Nico Arc versus Miyoko Arima. Arima, perhaps. Anyways, I have a gameplay video if you want to look at it. Sunsoft has announced a 16-player roguelike action game called Iki Unite for PC, which, yeah. This is going to be very pixely and very niche Japanese, so from the looks of it, so I don't know if this would come to the West, or if the West could possibly embrace it. Yeah. Definitely don't feel like there's a game here that catches my interest at all, even through the blurred videos. Commandos 3 HD Remaster launches August 30th for the PC, PS4, Switch, and Xbox One. This also will be available via Xbox Game Pass. Bullet Hell first-person shooter Luna Abyss announced for the PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Planet of Lana delayed to spring of 2023 and has been confirmed for the Xbox Game Pass. Asmodee Digital rebrands as Twin Sails Interactive, which Asmodee Digital is a name that they've really ruined by just not really supporting a lot of the German board games and card games that they made digital versions of. And they're not really even highlighting a lot of those games. Like they had Ticket to Ride and Carcassonne, for instance, there. A lot of these other games I did not even recognize as being Asmodee Digital. So perhaps this is an emphasis to show that they are going to be more interested in getting away from the card games, which they weren't particularly great at in the first place, and more interested in promoting these other games that I didn't even know existed. I have to kind of assume that all of these games are out already. And so, yeah, them rebranding is probably a great idea. When you have a trailer here that's showing just a ridiculous amount of games, and I didn't know about any of them. Some of these look fairly AA, single A, triple A. They're all over the board as far as quality. I would like to see also the Asmodee Digital board games get updated versions, though there's room for improvement there. One Shot World Machine Edition launches September 23rd for the PS4, Switch, and Xbox One, according to Gamatsu. We're still going through the Gamatsu articles. We have about 4 of them. River City Girls 1 and 2 bundle launches December 1st in Japan, which, if that's on Steam, maybe I could save a few bucks by getting the bundle. An action-adventure game called Reliquary has been announced for the PS4 and 5 and the Xbox Series and 1, or 1 in Series. Also Switch and PC. Which, let's just look at the screenshots on this. Looks like it's a platformer, top-down twin-stick shooter game. Action-adventure game is what it's tagged as. Anno Mutationum is coming to the Switch on September 1st. And then Square Enix Collective is going to publish a fairy tale horror RPG called Little Goody Two Shoes from Pocket Mirror developer Astral Shift, which I saw some tweets in Square Enix really promoting this quite a bit. Which is not a bad idea for Square Enix. Here we have some GameDeveloper.com articles. Activision Blizzard has now been accused of illegal surveillance in a new National Labor Review Board complaint, which I wouldn't put it past Activision Blizzard of doing that. Definitely feels like they are doing everything to union bust. There's an update here. An Activision Blizzard spokesman has pushed back on the complaints and said that the CWA continues to create an inaccurate picture of the Activision Blizzard, that it is willfully ignoring the facts. I actually worked at a job where a member of management did illegally survey on people and listen in via what they had done is they had put a phone in a break room, which in general that's wrong morally. Let's just talk morally, let alone legally or contract. They put a phone in a break room and had the line open and had it muted, and they were sitting in a different office and they were just listening, I think for probably quite a lot of time, to conversations happening in the break room. And this was a job that did have a union, and the union members did have conversations in the break room, and they did have specifically lined out the idea that the break room was an off-limits area for those types of union employee meetings to happen. So yeah, you can definitely have all kinds of illegal surveillance or unethical surveillance nowadays with technology, but you could have certainly done it too. Just having your wall against the ear or just listening in is unethical, even if you accidentally overhear something, and you still can't really use that. That's unethical in my book. Also, it's a huge waste of time because anything you hear is probably not going to help you as much as it's just going to show that you're a scumbag. But the managers in Activision Blizzard obviously are some scumbags, at least some of them are. Moving on, Paradox releases Across the Obelisk under a new Paradox Arc Publishing, which, okay, we have a game here that I've never heard of, and a company, Paradox, that I don't recognize either. So that's kind of an odd article from GameDeveloper.com because they tend not to put articles out just talking about games coming out. There's a report that contractors at Nintendo of America face alleged sexism, harassment, and pay inequality. The update here says Nintendo of America President Doug Bowser has promised that NOA will now actively investigating the recent claims of harassment and sexism in the company. I wonder if a lot of this isn't going to just be put on the old president. You could see Nintendo fighting it for a while and then saying, "Oh, actually, this was all set up by the old president. It's all the Reggie Fils-Aimé." Here we go. Ironically, was the next article. It's all Reggie's fault. And I could see Doug Bowser saying that, and that actually being the case. Although this actual story here says Reggie Fils-Aimé reveals that Nintendo had an adaptive controller in development, similar to the Xboxes, and it would have worked for all three consoles, and yet they've gotten nowhere with that. Probably because if Nintendo of America was working on it, Nintendo of Japan probably didn't care at all. It seems odd that you would release that information unless, well, I don't know what Reggie Fils-Aimé is really doing. He's just really stealing a lot of spotlights and taking interviews, when he should just be disappearing into the history books. I wouldn't be surprised if the fact that he keeps taking interviews and people are talking a lot more about Reggie Fils-Aimé than they are about Doug Bowser, that perhaps he was forced out of the company and Doug Bowser was put in charge, as a kind of internal coup. But as far as actual gamers, if you need an adaptive controller for the Switch, which could have been really useful, or for any consoles, well, honestly, if they're saying it would have worked for all three consoles, which three consoles are they talking about? This may have been something from years ago. It would have been completely functional for the Xbox and the PlayStation. Ah, that's what they mean. So it would have been an adaptive controller that worked for the Switch, the Xbox, and the PlayStation, which is probably better than having one that would have worked for the Switch and the 2DS and the 3DS, or some older consoles, which was what I was thinking. But yeah, it'd be nice if they put that out. But there's also a lot of patent laws and patent trolls around controllers, and so I could see the struggle to make an adaptive controller. And remember, it's worth pointing out that the adaptive controller that is out there for Microsoft is actually made by a third-party company, and Microsoft just was advertising it like they made it, and they kind of, what's the word I'm trying to say here? Yeah, Microsoft didn't really make the adaptivity controllers, and they just advertised it like they did. And those controllers are really expensive and not really being used by that many people. Even people with special needs, I'm not sure really benefited a ton from those controllers, because the people that actually needed those controllers would have been so disabled that I'm not sure they could play games anyways. Most of the people that are gamers and can play past their disabilities do it with either very custom controllers made specifically for their needs, or with just regular controllers holding them in a very odd way. There's a speedrunner in particular that plays everything with one hand on his leg, with the controller sitting on his leg, and his whole left side is like paralyzed or something. Moving on, Supercell is scrapping the Clash quest for failing to meet its very high standards. Well, I guess if you're going to cancel a game, you should say you have very high standards, even if it's not true. It's a smart way to go, to big your own company up while also announcing bad news. GameDeveloper.com says Tencent sees a Q2 revenue dip thanks to China's playtime restrictions, which that definitely is more evidence that that Tencent may legitimately really not want to be a Chinese company, even though it is a Chinese company, because even as the company that should be the Samsung to China, in the sense that Samsung owns like 80% of all the business in Korea, South Korea, and basically runs the country. In fact, very recently, the son of the father who Forum Samsung was pardoned for criminal activity, crimes he was convicted of, in the exact same way that the father who created Samsung was pardoned by the president for crimes. So you have two generations of people who were CEOs of Samsung who committed pretty big crimes, I would say, or convicted and then pardoned, because that's just the level of insane capitalistic corruption that is in South Korea. And if anything, that's probably the United States' fault. Like, the United States did the whole Korean War thing and did the 35th parallel separation and the formation of South Korea, and the United States mentality and military probably instilled the ideas of capitalism in that new society, in that new South Korea, to the point where it has, in an incredibly short time, allowed for one major monopoly to exist and effectively create a corporatocracy where, yes, officially South Korea is a democracy, but if the current Samsung CEO wants something, he can pick up the phone and call the president and get a pardon for himself. It's been proven twice. But my point there is, like, Tencent, if China cared about video games, Tencent probably would be the number one pick of China, and China would probably bend over backwards to make Tencent successful and own the game market and be a monopoly. But they don't care. They hurt their own citizens and their own businesses as much as anything else. Moving on, we had already talked about this story. Avalanche Studios co-founder reveals canceled Iron Man game would have broken the studio. It's worth also thinking about, what would an Iron Man game really look like? Like, is it really going to be that good of a looking of an experience? This is just the interview here. There's not going to be any video images. Yeah, I would really have to question whether a Iron Man game could be that fun. It probably could be. You could probably tell a good story, as far as in the same way that Spider-Man games can tell a good story. But Spider-Man has the whole web swinging, and I don't feel like flying around as Iron Man is going to be quite as fun as web swinging, and so there probably would be a de-emphasis on that. I wouldn't be surprised if it was an Iron Man game where you spend almost all your time on the ground and a lot more time talking and a lot less time fighting enemies, which, yeah, Iron Man's actions compared to Spider-Man are probably a little bit more mechanical and clunky instead of the smooth running and jumping and swinging of Spider-Man. And that's true for probably most superheroes, is that Spider-Man is probably the best character that they figured out how to control, and that's it. Interesting, we're getting some network frame drops here for a second. Yeah, but it fixed itself. So it dropped 0.0%, 275 out of about 500,000 frames. Let's wrap up though. Asmodee Digital rebranding itself as Twin Sails, we already talked about too, so then we've just got some fall list cleanup here that I need to keep an eye on. We have one from November 2021, the story of the Archer. I think we can get rid of this. I would like potentially an archery game, but I don't want one that looks like it's a zombie, like tower defense experience. It's a low polygon. So yeah, that'll take that off. Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe Edition. Inherently, I do want to own this game. It's rated very positively. Um, Probably just to get the achievements the second time, so put this on the wish list. Although, and also, in all fairness, I think there is more content in the Ultra Deluxe Edition, where the Remastered Edition, I don't think added anything. So, yeah. At a certain point, too, I'd also like for people to gift me that game, though, because I'm somewhat reticent to spending money on something twice if it's just a simple update. Here we have a Diablo clone that has basically no relevancy, so we'll take this off. I guess at this point too, since there are Diablo games I probably will get back to playing, and I got Diablo Remastered, I very possibly would choose to just play Diablo. Here we have a English game that uniquely has a very young character, and that is the story, where it's a little girl, her parents died, she's living with the uncle. But I don't know if there's any actual romance or anything in this. Yeah, you have very young kids. I think this is actually telling a very different story. By default, every visual novel makes me assume that there's a romance aspect to it, and certainly if this was a Japanese game, there would be at least a hint that this guy is looting after this character, this girl is looting after the uncle. To the point where even if you're a Western developer trying to tell a story about an uncle having to raise a niece, you really can't tell that story, and it's not a story that gets told very often in any format. Regardless, there's no relevancy here. It is also very questionable in the United States, at least, whether an uncle would even be allowed, a single uncle would even be allowed to raise a niece, because there's just the assumption that all men are pedophiles and are going to molest the niece. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the exact opposite. An aunt probably would be allowed to raise a nephew or niece with no questions asked. A single aunt would. This game doesn't look that good either. But yeah, each situation is definitely different, and they do just leave it up to the whatever child services thinks is in the best interest of the child. I'll give this game more time, although visually it's questionable if there's enough here. Escape Room, The Soldier's Curse. Is this a VR game? I think we say no to this escape room. It's from November 2021. It's long out of space. I'll give this more time, but it's probably gonna fail. Smurfs game. Mission Village. I remember talking about when this game came out, but I kind of totally forgot it. And it seems like you can get the pre-order bonuses just as only if you pre-ordered, and that's it. But whatever. Put this on the wish list. Again, this is hitting that edge of potentially being a kid-friendly game that kids probably won't really care about playing, because kids these days probably don't know what the Smurfs are. I'm not even sure the Smurfs were actually justifiably popular in the first place. They really, feel like more of one of those cartoons where it was on TV and you watched it if it was on, but I don't think there was anybody that was amazingly obsessed with the Smurfs. This one is still early access, but it does look interesting, so I'll leave it on the fall list. This is from 2022 and has no reviews, so that can leave the fall list. And with that, that is the last of the games I have to look at as far as follow-up. So let me just very quickly scroll through my Twitter feed and see if there's any new news that we need to talk about. Otherwise, we can wrap up. And because I started a little bit earlier, I'm ending a little bit earlier, which is nice. We're probably doing some backsliding, though. We're getting less people on the not really having had anybody on the chat lately, or I haven't been looking at views, so maybe I'm doing fine on views, either on the YouTube shorts or otherwise. I definitely need to schedule some videos though. Yeah, and I don't really think that there's any new news that would have come out. We are approaching the end of what would be considered summer fairly quickly, so if we're going to start seeing any kind of fall actions or fall specials or more games because it's the fall, that we should start to see that fairly quickly. And I will say, over the summer, a game called Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed will show. Over this summer, there has not been a lot of things happening. We still very much are just trying to recover things. Here they're saying Gotham Knights is gold, which gold means the game is finished enough that they can put it on the disc, and they'll start printing the plastic discs, and now they are just working in the meantime to make a day one patch. Warrior 64 is still a source for breaking news. Why do I not follow him on Twitter? That's an interesting question. Scrolling. Still scrolling down, just making sure. Doesn't have anything to do with video games, but the lewd English version of, I believe it's an Italian comic called Hot Paprika, which is sold in English version as Sweet Paprika. I think that's how they did it. Is about to wrap up. So, like, the most recent issue is the final issue. I've seen some screenshots of it. A world where angel-like creatures and demon-like creatures exist, and there's an angel-like creature that's the boyfriend slash husband that's totally in love with this devil-like creature that's Paprika, and there's a lot of instances where you get to see her topless, at least. It's a very sharp angled art style, kind of unique in the way it's being drawn. And ironically, it may very well be a case that if you are self-publishing or making an adult content game, comic book or adult content art, that is the point where you can draw on different art styles and nobody's going to complain as much as if you were trying to make a commercialized product that has to appeal to everybody. Back to video games, though. Gamatsu does have this article that says Ghostbusters Spirits Unleashed is launching October 18th. This is a 4 versus 1 asymmetric multiplayer game. I feel like this had already been announced, but I'm not sure I really remember what. I'm not really sure. I really remember what they were trying to go for. I guess I am following Wario 64, but I must have muted him or something. Probably because he's retweeting a lot of stuff. And he probably just flooded my my Twitter feed with just a lot of news, a lot of advertisements potentially too of things on sale. Well, I'll leave that as it is. And with that, that will be the end of this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend to follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.